We're back. Colts Corner, Kevin Bowen. We are nearing the 2025 NFL Draft. Just a hair over 2 weeks to go in that. And it's about to pick up. Eddie Garrison. Colts will start their offseason program here in less than 2 weeks. I guess we're in a little bit of a quiet period, but again, it's going to ramp up big time. Today's podcast, I figured now was probably the ideal time to focus on Anthony Richardson's specific pod. It's something I've wanted to get to at some point here in the offseason. I think next week we got to get to draft mode, and probably the next, 3 or 4 podcasts, honestly, will be more draft-centric, previewing and then reacting to it all. But right now, I think with how the calendar falls, you see some teams that have started their offseason programs. The Colts will start theirs on April 21st. I say we focus on Richardson. We'll certainly hit on the Braden Smith story from Joel A. Erickson here to lead off, but I like a little Richardson focus today, good sir.
2 things. Every time you start off the pod and you're like, on today's podcast, I always feel like you're going to say it's brought to you by so-and-so, so it always throws me off. But hey, if you're looking to advertise with Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen, shoot one of us a DM. And
by all means, right?
We'll get that all situated. Wow, I can't talk. Situated. Number 2, is this the least hyped draft in years? Because I feel like I haven't heard anything. There's not really been any hype around it. And we're 2 weeks away, KB.
Yeah, it is. It does feel like it's got a little bit of that. Outside of the, what position is Hunter going to play? I guess is Cam Ward to the Titans definitely going to be the thing at 1. And then, I saw an over-under today. I think it was 9 for Shadur Sanders. I think Tyler Warren is like 9.5. Both of them are kind of right there. So I don't know, maybe a little bit of that. I mean, and you also, this time last year we had the sexiness of Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, and even Brock Bowers. You don't have that either. So yeah, certainly I think it has some of that feel to it. So yeah, we'll be curious how it all plays out. Let's start with the Braden Smith story. First off, Eddie, just I guess for those that maybe have missed it, which I'd be hard-pressed if you're listening to our podcast here that you missed it. Just incredible, tremendous vulnerability from Braden Smith and his wife, Courtney.
Great job by Joel A. Erickson with the story.
Yeah, I wanted to start with acknowledging Braden and his family, because I don't think that if he would have just chosen not to say anything, honestly, I feel like that's kind of Braden. He's not a big talker, really, on any topic. He's probably one of the quietest players I've ever covered in a Colts uniform. So certainly I'll start there. For them wanting to tell their story. They didn't have to do this. They wanted to do it. And I think Courtney herself has explained, especially, they feel like it's important for them to explain it to hopefully help others, was pretty much kind of their general thought in doing so. And then, yes, Eddie, Joel A. Erickson is a great, great human, first off. And I think he's a very, very respected journalist, reporter, a man of integrity, professionally and personally. So it's no surprise. And kudos to the Colts and Braden Smith for, wanting Joel to tell their story. You could have gone a lot of different avenues. They could have kept it internal. They could have done a Players Tribune. They could have done whatever, national. They could have picked someone else on the beat. Joel deserves it. So, yeah, let's just start there with all of it. Boy, Eddie, it's a vivid story. It's a story with some dark moments. I probably sit here on April 9th and think it's almost kind of crazy. He's still playing football, when you read it and you hear some of the details within all of it. Again, an OCD revolving religion is basically, to kind of summarize it in a very concise manner. Sounds like something that he had been dealing with outwardly, and when I say outwardly, I mean probably just with Courtney, frankly, and maybe some other people close to him, since about this time last year. And then earlier last season, after the Bears game, it was mentioned in the piece, he's like, if this doesn't get any better, I'm going to have to retire, or at least consider it. And Eddie, it's amazing to me, not only was he playing football, but I would argue Braden Smith played pretty darn good football last season. He played almost every snap up until he had to leave the team for good, I guess, there that Wednesday before the Jets game, or the Wednesday before I think it was the Jets game. I don't know. Maybe the Jets game was when he showed up at the facility and then realized on a walkthrough that he needed to go home, and still took the team playing. I think he was listed as like questionable for a personal reason. And then later in the season, right before, I think it was 5 games he ended up missing. That's when he went home and basically napping, he said, was kind of the only way to escape all of it. Some of the quotes: I was physically present, but I was nowhere to be found. I did not care about playing football. I didn't care about hanging with my family, my wife, my newborn son. And probably the most jarring quote in the entire piece: I felt like I was a month away from putting a bullet through my brain. I mean, just unbelievable when you read all of this. So I guess I don't know how much of the story details I want to get to, because frankly, I think Joel tells it in such a perfect way that I don't want to discredit that. But basically, Braden has said, he still has OCD, but doesn't feel like it has a hold over him, doesn't dictate his life, I think was his direct quote, as much as it used to, and he still wants to play football and is going to play football here coming up. So within the piece, Joel does mention the football component of it, of the Colts restructured the final year here of Braden's contract. He will be a free agent. I want to say he's close to 30, right around there from an age standpoint. So I guess, Eddie, I probably will shift a little bit to the football aspect, but I certainly don't want to undermine the story itself. And again, encourage everyone to go read Joel's piece. But anything that just stood out from the non-football element to the Braden Smith story?
No, I just commend him and his wife for going on the record with this, and being so outwardly spoken and open and vulnerable, because I know it may not be easy to talk about something like this, let alone when you're on, you're pretty much on the heels of coming out of it was a mental health facility, right, that he went to?
Tijuana. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, you're on the heels of coming out of that, and you're probably in a really good headspace, and most people don't want to go back and have to recount those memories and go back and have to live through all that again, just because it could send them back down that road again. And I just commend Braden Smith and his wife for being so open about it. And I hope there are other players around the NFL that either read that piece or watch some of the clips that Joel Erickson and that were within that article, and they take the proper precautions themselves to make sure they are right mentally and physically, so that they don't obviously hurt themselves, but hurt anyone they love that is also around them.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And yeah, there, as you just mentioned, Eddie, there's a video component to this. Clark Wade from the Indy Star also filmed Courtney and Braden. So clearly they wanted this message not just out, word-wise, but, they were very comfortable on camera in doing this. So yes, I'll echo what I said at the start. Just tremendous vulnerability from both of them. Obviously, you hope that Braden finds some peace in all of this. But at the same time, and I think the family's goal in this was hopefully we can help others. And, say what you want about the Colts and their product on the field, but this is kind of that kicking the stigma acted out, is really what it is. So if you're going to be about that aspect of it, certainly when these moments arise, and the Colts could have done some things financially to hamstring Braden Smith even more, but they elected not to do that. So certainly it's actions speaking to kind of those words with, a huge initiative, especially for Kaylin Jackson, the youngest Irsay daughter. Football-wise with Braden Smith, I don't know if I substantially have strong feelings, and like my draft philosophy has shifted after reading this story. Eddie, a lot of people have brought up, okay, can you compare this at all to Anthony Costanzo? And I think I've done that even before we knew the details of Braden Smith's situation. I think I said to you, I thought the Anthony Costanzo situation was just kind of malpractice in the lack of attention they gave the passing of the torch at left tackle back when Costanzo had publicly used the R word. Once you publicly say that, the antenna needs to be up, the red flags need to be up. And they did not try and address an insurance policy at all. Right now, even before this Braden Smith thing, last April, they drafted Matt Gonzalez. They traded up for Matt Gonzalez. You think about Ballard's draft history, Eddie. 22 trades in Ballard's drafts. Only 5 of them have been for trade-ups.
Cross, Gonzalez,
Taylor, Jonathan Taylor, Tyquan Lewis, and Kari Willis. So he doesn't do it often. And so when, he traded up for Gonzalez last year, that stood out to me, especially when Gonzalez was a guy that, some draft pundits had even deeper. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily mid round 3 or wherever he ended up going. So I think there is already some insurance there. Now, having said that, I still think offensive line needs attention. I probably think in the middle rounds. Joe Haig, Joe Wright's vibes, kind of what I get in what I'd be maybe more of a guard. Could fill in at a pinch at tackle. I still think the tackle depth.
You okay over there? You're like gulping for air.
Yeah, I had a hiccup there. I think I was nervous about the Masters starting here.
You got your shirt on. You got your hat on. That shirt's 14 years old.
I am,
and it still fits.
I am decked out. Yes, this is a 2011 shirt. Yeah, I could say I'm good. Do you have a Masters pick, Eddie?
No.
Boy, you said that so aggressively. Do you hate it, or do you just not want to reveal a pick? I mean, usually you are
Well, you usually
enjoy the
force
gambling
me.
side of it.
You usually force me to make picks, and I don't watch golf, so I don't have a pick. I'll probably only watch on Sunday.
Gosh, that's the saddest thing anyone's ever said on this Colts Corner.
Is that why it took you a second to reply there? Because you just needed to
heartbroken
not
by just hearing that from Eddie. Okay,
jump down my throat.
We can take that off air. But again, when I look at offensive line, last year Gonzalez 3, Bortolini 4. I don't know if you need to do that type of attention, but I think you do need to do something of note there. And then, Braden Smith, from a free agency standpoint, he's a free agent next year. So, how do you view that in terms of kind of the long-term future? Is Gonzalez going to be your right guard for this year, then bumps out to right tackle next year? So some attention is needed there. But I'm not of the opinion, Eddie, that I read Braden Smith's story and now all of a sudden I think, oh my gosh, you need to do everything that you can to address this immediately. No, I think internally, Gonzalez being the guy is a big part of it. I don't know if I sit here and expect Blake Freeland to make some massive jump, but he was a 4th-round pick. It's like, do you see any growth out of him? I didn't think you saw really much of that in year 2, but that is something also to keep an eye on.
By the way, I just got an email from Mark Dykton. It was just about your show from this morning. Jeff loves the banana. What's that all about?
Yes. James Boyd and I are frequent banana eaters in the morning. So I believe that is a reference to he appreciates our health-conscious banana nature to our mornings here.
By the way, who is your Masters pick? You can't
I'll
pick
go with
Tiger.
Jordan Spieth.
Jordan Spieth?
Unless Tiger calls Augusta and says he's playing before tomorrow morning. Then I'll go Tiger.
I thought it started today.
Gosh, do you know nothing about golf?
No, I thought the Masters started on Wednesday. Sorry.
Oh, my gosh, Eddie. Oh, I'm heartbroken, man.
I've never followed golf. It's too time-consuming for me.
I'm not asking you to live and die with Angel Cabrera's, 87 shots tomorrow, but geez, come on, brother. Should we move on to Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, let's please move on to Anthony Richardson. This is the Anthony-centric podcast that I'm sure a lot of people have been waiting for. We'll go over what you like, what must improve. Let's start, Kevin, with what you like. Obviously, the run element is probably the only thing at the moment that you have to like. And then maybe just the poise that he has shown, especially last season, down the stretch in fourth quarters.
Yeah, I mean, I would start with the general stress he does put on a defense from a big play standpoint. I think there's an element with Richardson of you never feel like you're out of it. Some of those comebacks, they did happen in a hurry with, him finding Pierce or, those types of plays down the field.
Even go back to his rookie season against the Rams. They make that comeback in the fourth quarter, force overtime.
Yeah, down, 23-0, something like that
in
that game. So, obviously, you point out the run element. If you look at the numbers with him and Jonathan Taylor in the lineup, it's super dynamic. Sack avoidance, I would say, is something that he does well. And I think at times people maybe take that for granted. If you're all of a sudden starting a couple new offensive linemen and you don't have that, just the ability to erase a negative play. I mean, look at the tap-out play, Eddie. For a lot of quarterbacks, it's a 10, 15-yard loss. For what it's worth, he turned it into, I believe, even a gain on that play, if I remember correctly on that. Poise Certainly. I mean, I think we forget the Jets ending and the Patriots ending a little bit. You were staring defeat right in the face in both of those games, and I largely think the blame for both of that would fall on the defense in both of those games, and especially it was a Jets game, right, where he kind of threw his way down the field. I think that was more the throws down the field, and I want to say the Patriots game had all the fourth downs involved in it. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can discredit that because that's an unknown element to any quarterback, I think, that you have to project to the NFL level of, boy, week in and week out, you could have games filled with fourth quarter pressure. What happens? Good, bad, from an indifferent standpoint?
Sorry, we got distracted. James Boyd dancing in the window as we record this podcast.
Very impressive dance moves right there from Romeo Vo Kid. So I think those fourth honestly, it probably makes the lapses at other times so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. If he's that poised when the game's on the line, damn. Can you imagine if you could just study that out a little bit?
Which kind of makes sense as to, the word that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard keep using, consistency. That's the one word that they keep preaching about when it comes to Anthony's consistency.
Right. And then, so I would say that's probably where I kind of stop with the positives. This really isn't a positive, but I guess I just bring this up now of like, what is he about to look like after a healthy offseason?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you drafted one of the rawest, most inexperienced quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. You expected growth. You expected development. You expected, hey, we'll play him early, but we need patience. Okay, I understand all of that. I don't disagree, frankly, with really any of it. So there is a part of me that's like, well, shouldn't we allow the healthy offseason to play out? And not just all of a sudden say, yeah, it's over to be done with that. I mean, hell, we're also talking about Eddie, his rookie year. I mean, a guy by the name of Jacob Martin played more snaps than Anthony Richardson as a rookie. Jacob Martin in a Colts uniform played more snaps than Anthony Richardson did as a rookie. So it's not even like let's say he played 12 games as a rookie and then got hurt and had the season-ending injury, so then had to rehab that first offseason. And now this would be his first healthy offseason. No. It's his first healthy offseason, and he played 173 snaps as a rookie, too. So, again, that's not necessarily something he does well, but I do think it's worth pointing out. I know a lot of people can kind of spin how you view, hey, starting quarterback record. I get that's a very hot button topic. Some people say it should matter. Some people say it shouldn't matter at all. For what it's worth, he's 8-7 as a starter. Some people say I don't care.
What's his record against teams above 500?
I would probably guess not very good. Well, granted, I don't think the Colts have been very good in that whole area. You've beaten, I think Baker Mayfield's probably the only quarterback you've beaten in the last year plus. So take that for what it's worth. If you want to say quarterback record matters, you look at 8-7 and say, that's not bad. Some would say, well, show me the teams that he's beaten.
That's exactly why I asked you the question of over the 500, like the teams over 500. Like, cool, it's nice that you can beat the teams that you probably should beat.
Yeah. And some would counter and say, okay, you also fired your defensive coordinator in that stretch. That means your defense isn't very good, right?
Yeah.
So how much does that contribute to the record? So it makes the Richardson thing really, really complicated. Very complicated. But yeah, I would say that's probably what he does well. Anything to add on that front, or should we get into the other?
No, I don't think so. I think you hit it on nail on the head there. I mean, you heard Chris Ballard talk about the poise in the draft process after they selected Anthony. It's like, hey, this guy's raw, but we see a lot of poise with him. And I mean, you saw that a little bit on hand last year with, those games that you illustrated between New England and the New York Jets. And I just wish, as Shane and Chris are probably pulling their hair out every single day, be like, man, can we just get this guy to just dial it in and be consistent from practice to practice and game to game? Just because, like we've talked about so many times, Kevin, is the fact that the ceiling is so high for him. I mean, it's probably the moon, just because of the physical talent and the traits that he has. But He just has to be able to hone it in, and I think that's just part of the maturity process.
Okay, switching gears now to what he doesn't do well. Simply, he doesn't do boring well enough. He doesn't do simple well enough. We've used the baseball analogy quite often. We know the home runs are there. You need more singles.
And a walk occasionally.
Walk. Yeah, so many people would point to the completion percentage number. I don't even think it needs to be as high as people say it does. I think you could live with 55%, frankly, if he also toned down the turnovers, which we'll get to here in a second. So if people want to point to the hardcore completion percentage number, again, I don't think that needs to rise in a crazy significant manner. It certainly needs to. I think he struggles with anticipation and touch and kind of marrying those two together. You're throwing with anticipation to make sure the NFL window doesn't close as quickly as NFL windows do close. And then just kind of knowing, when you need the 100-mile-per-hour fastball and when you don't. Not every ball has got to be that. I'm thinking back to last night in that Pacer game. Eddie, there are a couple of passes that Tyrese Halliburton threw in the second half to Benedict Mathurin, like full court, half court passes that were not only passes Mathurin caught, but Mathurin never had to break stride. It was unbelievable how on target Richardson never does that. Never is a strong thrower on underneath stuff of in stride, you don't need to reach behind you sort of quarterback. He doesn't do that enough. The turnovers got to be way too big of an issue last season. They weren't that as a rookie, but they were definitely too big of an issue last season. Again, to continue the baseball analogy, you can't have the backwards looking strikeouts. And he had too many of them.
Or if you're going as a pitcher, you can't be walking too many batters.
Yeah, you just you got to put more balls in play. I guess if we want to continue down this path, we probably should stop with our baseball analogies. But
no, please, let's keep going.
And I guess I do have a general thought now, and again, this isn't necessarily in the outright negative category. But Eddie, whether it's him or it's the Colts, they haven't really changed many of the voices around him. Is that a good or a bad thing? Shane Steichen opts for continuity. That's what Shane's answer would be to that. No. I think coaching staff continuity would be that. Okay, let's play out the Josh Allen example. They stuck with Brian Dable throughout, but Ken Dorsey was brought in. And I think you talk to Josh Allen, Ken Dorsey had a pretty good influence on him.
Yeah, but so did Chris Hess. I think that's where a lot of his improvement and success derives
both.
from.
You had Hess and you had Dorsey. Now, again, Hess supposedly is now involved with Richardson. Okay, how much
is
of that
Josh Allen?
Yeah, and I don't want to put too much on Josh Allen's plate of like.
Well, I know. Well, I'm just saying that Josh Allen is also helping Anthony because they're working out together. Yeah.
But again, internally from a Colts standpoint, nothing. I mean, it's the same coaching staff. It's the same quarterback coach. It's the same play caller. It's the same offensive coordinator. So none of that has changed. Again, you could probably spin that in a couple of different directions. Shane Steichen chooses to use the continuity matters a whole lot. We don't want to change voices, messaging, et cetera, et cetera. And others would say, well, it could be healthy if you provided a different voice, a different type of voice for Richardson there. Obviously, the availability has been a clear issue. There's no denying that. What is it, 17 missed games due to injury? I think it is. It's the first thing Chris Bauer said at the end of the season and where Richardson needs to improve, which is scary because I just mentioned it third. I said accuracy first and turnover second and then injuries. But I could listen to Ballard. I mean, he's not wrong. So it's a long list. And I've made the analogy before, Eddie, it's like hitting a 3-game parlay, 4-game parlay. If you start adding those parlays up, you realize very quickly how long those odds are, how difficult it is to do all of that. And that's what you are asking for from him. Now, again, from a hit standpoint, you need to hit multiple different parlays. But again, I think we should be probably a little bit realistic in just what the expectations are for those individual categories. And by that, I mean this. I don't need him to be Phillip Rivers tomorrow accurate. You can live with 57%.
Yeah.
You can live with a turnover number that is middle of the pack in starting quarterbacks. It can't be in the basement because the thought is he creates enough of the big plays, which again, that to me has been a strength of him. I remember listening to Joe Wright, who does great work on the Colts Radio Network, talking about work ethic and, basically for a quarterback, he looks to that quarterback for three things. Do you set the standard from a work ethic standpoint? I think right now it's an issue for Richardson. Do you inspire others? Probably debatable. I do think there's an element when Richardson's on the field and guys watch him play, they're like, damn, do you see how much he's putting his body on the line? That is. I mean, if you watch the sideline react to some Richardson plays, there's juice there that you don't get. And then lastly, special moments. Do you have belief in that quarterback? I mean, I don't want to overreact too much to the fourth quarter stuff, but Richardson's fourth quarter has arguably been his best quarter. Mm-hmm. When you look at his career. So that is an element that you do like. So I think that just kind of lays it out. And now, Eddie, as we transition, you are in 2025. This is the first year where I think I would have said this about Richardson on April 30th, 2023 after he got drafted. Shit's about to get real. The question last year for me with Richardson was this. When you get to the end of year 2 and you ask the Anthony Richardson question, for me, the answer you were trying to find was, is he trending towards a second contract? Mm-hmm. That question was answered with, I would say, a relatively emphatic no. But again, the question was, is he trending towards a second contract?
Should the question have been, is he trending towards the fifth-year option?
Well, yeah, maybe that. I guess I should have probably worded of...
Can have the fifth year...
The financial commitment. Is he trending towards you want to give him more money? If you can probably put it in simplest terms. Now, Eddie, I would say it's more of a... Like, is he it or not? I mean, like, I think it's that direct. Because, yes, you do owe him more money, and that decision you would have to make following next season. But let's say you were, 40% into the Richardson experience last year. I would argue at the end of this year, you're like 80 or 90 into it. Like, you it's a little bit of bleep or get off the pot in my mind. Like, are you some might say, hey, if he makes incremental improvements, you give him a fourth year. Yeah, you're increasing his fifth year option. Let's say they pick it up. You're not tying yourself to the next $200 million or whatever that next contract would look like. But you're also not sitting here saying you're done with him. That might be an answer you get to at the end of this season, but largely, I think you're going to get is it yes or no? You are pretty much at that point. I don't think it's fair to say you're all the way there, but that's where you're at. So ultimately for me, it comes down to, can you find Easy better? Can he find Easy better in the passing game? Because if you can do that, if you can hit a couple more singles, and you can stay away from the strikeouts, then I think you have something you can work with.
The one thing that you didn't mention with all that, and I think it probably goes hand in hand with just the doing boring better, is limiting the number of 3-and-outs or the number of possessions where, like, you get a first down on like the first or second play, and then it's a 3-and-out right after that. They need to lengthen the drives a little bit more, because I think that's part of it. Kind of goes hand in hand with the defense. Like, the defense isn't forcing 3-and-outs or getting quick stops to get the offense back out there. The offense is getting 3-and-out or quick outs, whether that's through turnovers or 3-and-outs, and the defense has to go right back out there. So neither one of them are complementary. It's not complementary football between the two parties. Now, if they can meet in the middle somewhere, I think it'll help out certainly both parties, just because, A, that means Richardson's going to get more reps. Like, how many times during the course of the season last year, KB, did we look at the time of possession and the Colts were being doubled? I remember that Houston game, and they had barely 20 minutes of possession. And when you have a young quarterback that's inexperienced like Anthony Richardson, he needs to be out there more to get more reps. And I thought that's where that New England game you go back to with, however, it was 16 plays, right? It was like something ridiculous where it was like, okay, we need more of
fourth
those
down after fourth down,
types. Yes, those types of drives where it's it's sustaining, and he's making easy completions, he's making reads, but a large part of that drive with New England was on the ground with his legs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. One of those games, Eddie, I remember he missed Mallory on a very easy dump in the flat. I can kind of picture it near sideline right now. And he then had to create on a third down to find Mo Alley Cox, I want to say. It was. He kind of rolled to his right, and he had to extend and convert a 3rd and long, if I'm not mistaken. And it's that to me is a perfect example of if you can find Mallory there, then you don't need Houdini highlight reel on the next play.
Yeah.
Because at some point, that juice is going to run out. And it's just playing with fire, frankly. So I guess to summarize it all, it's this, Eddie. The competition is not ideal. You don't draft a quarterback 4th overall to be having a quarterback competition year 3. I'd argue the competition itself, like Daniel Jones as a player, isn't ideal either. I don't think Band-Aids work in the AFC. Both are long shots. So if both are long shots, I'm going to bet on who has a higher potential, who's a little bit cheaper, Richardson. And again, the one who hasn't had a healthy NFL offseason yet and has 55 less starts in the league. And again, even if AR hits, even if this all hits, you still aren't having to commit $200 million to him next offseason. You don't, even if Richardson has a year where it's we're still a little wishy-washy at the end of the year, while that's not, again, ideal for the franchise, you also aren't tying yourself financially to him in an immense measure. I mean, honestly, if Jones has the wishy-washy year, that's the one that you'd probably have to tie yourself more to from a financial sense. I mean, he's the one that actually is a free agent, and you would have to look at that. So the Richardson thing is complicated, for sure. There are a lot of different layers to it. I feel a bit onion-like in what you have here. But I felt like it was necessary. Just kind of lay it out. Good, bad, certainly more bad than good. But I also think there is a little bit of an element of you owe it to yourself as a franchise to see the healthy offseason play out, especially when the other option is a 70-start Daniel Jones. Right. Like when you lay it out like that, if you're going to make me pick, that's what I would be picking.
Do you have anything else to add on the...
I got nothing more on Richardson.
I do have 2 things I want to throw in here before we get to Twitter questions. One, I forget which NFL Network guy had this morning. Colts are bringing in Quinn Ewers for a workout. That's the second time they've now met with him. They met with him at the Combine when it was here in Indy, and now they're bringing him in for one of the top 30 workouts, I would assume.
What did they draft earlier, quarterback or running back?
Well, I've got another one I want to add into this, but we've got a Twitter question pertaining to this position, so I'll hold off, and then I'll let you opine, as Jake Cray likes to say. The second thing I wanted to bring up, I'm trying to find the exact quote here. Okay, Mike Sando from The Athletic, he does this thing each and every year where he goes through the NFL offseason and free agency more specifically, and he gets quotes from executives around the league, and of course they're to be named nameless. One person in the NFL that's an executive told Mike Sando that Daniel Jones has a chance to be the next Sam Darnold, but I wonder if that would be a good thing for everyone there. Does the GM need Richardson to win the job? The watch is on for Daniel.
Yeah, I guess the answer though, I don't know. In Irsay's eyes, I just think Irsay says if somehow Daniel Jones strikes lightning in a bottle, then boom, Ballard would continue his job. I don't think it's Richardson or bust for this regime. I don't think Irsay views it like that. I don't know, maybe he does, but granted, and this is why I would love to hear from him. Just if we could get a little bit more clarity on that aspect of it.
Let's transition now to Twitter questions. We have 4 of them. We'll start with Jeffrey. Positional mock draft, if you are, just chomping at the bit to read that, it's up on 1075thefan.com. We'll talk about it more next week. In the spirit of the legendary, to your notice, Anthony Costanzo, second time we've mentioned this on the podcast today, by the way, to Matt Pryor handoff, Jeffrey says, if I get the chance to draft a plug-and-play left tackle or right tackle with the first or second pick, I'd do it. Freeman is bad, and Braden Smith unavailability even before the mental health issue was concerning.
Yeah, again, this is where I think Gonzalez comes into play a little bit. And yeah, like Eddie said, we'll get a little bit more into the positional mock draft coming up on next week's podcast. I still kind of view the mid-round. And do you double dip on O-line? I mean, that thought has crossed my head. But to me, this is very different than Costanzo. I mean, Costanzo, you left the cupboard bare, and I thought it was such a mistake, major malpractice, and you largely paid for it, really. I don't view it in the same light. Let's say Braden Smith, retired tomorrow. Okay, Gonzalez is your right tackle. Then your right guard right now internally, you have like Dalton Tucker, Danny Pinter, Josh Sills, I don't know, Wesley French's interior guy. And yeah, you'd probably bump up the draft pick. Maybe you draft a guard in round 2 or round 3. Like, if you played out that, I don't think it's dire. It's not ideal, but I don't think it's certainly not Costanzo to Pryor at all. So yeah, I get where you read Braden Smith's words and there's some uneasiness and just like, man, is he really going to be committed? What happens if all of a sudden he gets in the season and the stress of a season, sends him down that path again. I get that, but I do think, last year Braden Smith missed 5 games at the end of the year, Eddie. Mm-hmm. I didn't think like your offensive line play was egregious.
No.
By any means, without him in the line. I still think he's a quality player, but I don't think it's very egregious. Now, having said all that, you also, he is in a contract here, even if you just want to play that game out. So I would expect an offensive line pick within the first 3 to 4 rounds for sure, but I don't think there's a need to get maybe 2 in the first 4 rounds or something along those lines.
Next up is Tyler. Forgive my lack of knowledge on how this works, is what he states. But we often see teams converting a player's salary to a bonus or something along those lines to save cap space. Is that something the Colts could do to generate more cap space on a player and maybe take a swing for Trey Hendrickson along with draft capital, trade, and or a player?
Yeah, it's something I'm going to be watching for on the draft, Eddie, of like, I don't pay super attention to like even the AFC South teams in the draft that much. Like, I'm not one that all of a sudden, gets super locked in on what they do. Obviously, there's some general curiosity, but like, for the most part, I'm focused on, okay, what are the Colts doing at 14?
Not even Tennessee with
pick? Sure, but it's like, it's not like I'm diving into Cam Ward super in-depthly. Like, I think you're just kind of focused on your own team and what they do. When the Colts make the pick at 14, a lot of that scramble mode and trying to produce content right after that pick happens. If the Bengals draft an edge rusher at 17, though, that might pique my interest a little bit. Because then does that mean Hendrickson is available?
Perhaps.
Maybe not. So that is an element that I'm pointing out there. As much as the now Hendrickson thing has gotten a bit public, it does seem like when it's all said and done that like he still will stay there. I don't know. The words have taken a little bit of a different kind of almost venomous feel to it all. But yes, I guess to answer this question, yes, the Colts could restructure. They also could outright, like a guy like Rodney Thomas, they could outright cut him and save some cap there. Samson Ebukam, I know, is a name a lot of people have brought up. It doesn't sound like he's in that camp at all, but yeah.
I know you mentioned Samson Ebukam, so I'm going to skip over Sam's question. We'll get to him here at the end because Colton brings up edge. Actually, I need to finish off Tyler's first. Also, let's say you have $1,000 in hand and you have to place a wager on Daniel Jones starting 3.5 games. Taking the under or the over? Hope all is well with the family, and thanks as always.
Oh, over for sure. Yeah.
Now, is that because of decisions of wanting to start Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, or is that because Anthony Richardson got hurt again?
Both. Yeah,
no cop-out answers. Well, one or the other.
It's an over-under bet. Do you win the bet or do you not win the bet?
I guess that's true. But yeah, that's not what
I won't fully cop out. I will give you more of an answer than that. But like if you were literally in Vegas and trying to weigh it,
I'll be there next week.
Boom. You've got 2 things in your favor.
I should talk to the sports books there. Be like, hey, we need to get the Daniel Jones starts prop up.
Well, I would want to text you some golf bets, but I'm afraid you wouldn't even know what was going on. So okay. I'd be so worried about them. 3.5. Honestly, Eddie, I think a little bit of the $14 million comes from like Richardson's availability. Like if you're Daniel Jones's agent and you're negotiating with the Colts, you've got to be saying, Colts, even if my guy doesn't beat out your guy, have you seen your guy's health?
Yep.
you better incentivize my guy with a little bit of that. So I actually think that is, a little bit at play as well. If you had to make me guess right now, how will the Richardson thing play out? I would assume he is the week 1 starter. That would be my assumption. But I'm not going to bank on his health or his health or his level of play being to the point where he only misses 3 games. I mean, last year he missed 4 due to injury? Is that right? Back was 2 and what was it?
Do you have a concussion?
No, he had something abdominal.
Hip.
Remember, it became an oblique. Was it an abdominal and it became an oblique?
No, it was the Minka Fitzpatrick hit, was it not? It was like the hip?
Yeah, but then it changed.
It turned into an oblique?
Yeah, something like that. I think he missed 2 for that, and I think he missed 2 for the back at the end of the year. So right there's 4. And that's not even taken into consideration. He got benched. So that's how I would view it.
Now, to Colton's question, because you brought up Samson Ebukam and being able to cut him for cap space, what do you think of the Colts drafting an edge defender in round 1 this year? Kwity Paye and Samson Ebukam are free agents next year, and it usually takes a couple of years for a pass rusher to develop. So why not let him sit behind them and be ready for next year? Another added element into this, KB, he mentioned those 2, but the only edge rusher that is underneath contract next year for the Colts is last year's 15th overall selection in Leatu Latu.
Right. Yeah, Paye is playing his 5th-year option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out, and then, of course, Ebukam, this second deal here. I mean, you never rule it out. Edge rusher to me, I was such a fan of taking edge rusher last year just because I think, especially in a Gus Bradley defense, when you don't blitz, it mattered a whole lot. Boy, what a big year for Kwity Paye, especially with the Dangbo at the door. My only counter to it, Colton, would be the direct help for Richardson. When you talk about the direct help for Richardson, I know indirectly, and you brought this up earlier in the podcast, sure, if you have a better defense, it gives him the ball more, et cetera, et cetera.
Has he earned the right to have the direct help, though?
Well,
because if you don't know if he's your starter going into next year, this year, then you're probably looking at the big picture of where is the area that I need to improve the most with my football team.
Yeah, I think any quarterback, frankly, will need that sort of help. I'm a big believer in this. If you're going to spend a high draft pick on a quarterback, you can't get to the end of their era and say, we didn't do enough to help that guy, personnel-wise. I don't necessarily look at the Colts situation and think that. Let me be clear. I don't think it's been – there is part of me that looks at now is this the 3rd offseason? Yeah, 3rd offseason. There is a little bit of me is like, wow, if you compare what the Colts have done offensively to what Houston's done with Stroud, Washington's done with Daniels, go back to Josh Allen, go to Jalen Hurts, go, even Tua in Miami. The Colts really haven't done that much. Now, Jonathan Taylor was already in place.
Taylor, Pittman.
Right.
Added Downs.
Adding. Downs would probably be the only one they've added.
That you felt like played with Richardson's skill set. And then you add Mitchell.
But, yeah, none of those happened in the 3 years with Richardson. Just Mitchell and Downs. Pierce was already here. Pittman was already here. Taylor was already here. Direct help to further the improvement of that skill set. Again, I don't necessarily look at it and think the Colts have been malpracticed in this area. Let me be clear on that. But when you compare to Stephon Diggs for Josh Allen, or what Houston added, and whether it was Mixon or whether it was Schultz or whether it was Diggs,
Mixon was more of an addition for them than Stephon Diggs was, because Stroud regressed last year.
Yeah. I'm sure you could probably look at that, but again, just the general adding of pieces with this guy, the Colts really haven't done much. So when you consider the tight end position was beyond laughable last season here in Indianapolis, to me, it does make sense to go ahead and do that. I get, again, I'm never going to, frankly, I don't think I'd ever rip any franchise for drafting an edge rusher, considering pass rush in the front means that much. But when your quarterback play has been this big of an issue, your tight end play has been this big of an issue, I do think it kind of warrants, direct help for, direct help for Daniel Jones if you want to play that game out. It's needed as well.
I look at how Bryce Young played for Carolina after the benching, and I just look at what he has. Their best receiver was who? Adam Thielen?
Yeah, I mean, they need more, right? I mean, they
have nothing, and he proved to show more than Anthony did, and Anthony arguably has the NFL talent around him.
Like,
I don't know. I can't fully buy into they haven't done anything or they haven't added around him because I feel like they have good players and they have a good offensive-minded coach to where not every situation is going to be perfect for every quarterback. There's always going to be something missing on the offense. And I think if you're looking at it, I think tight end is probably one of them that you can get away with sometimes.
Yeah, and again, let me be clear. I don't sit here. I mean, when I just laid out the good and bad of Richardson, I didn't say for once I think the Colts have failed him in this area. But they've also not gone out of their way to do something above and beyond. Now, the rumor was they were trying to last year with the Giants, right?
Yeah.
Trade up, into the top 10. That would have been a huge move, a la whatever, prime Stephon Diggs going to pair up with Josh Allen. That sort of feeling to it. So let's label their skill group, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a B?
Probably,
B plus? Yeah. Trying to make it even better. Is that an approach a team should take with that young quarterback? Is the thought process there, we have a guy on a rookie contract, now is the time to swing for the fences. You go above and beyond at the skill group because at some point, you can't pay everybody. At some point, Tyreek Hill leaves Kansas City, and Mahomes is going to have to carry it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is that general thought. Some NFL teams, I think, have that thought. I think you see some of that playing out in Houston. You see some of that playing out in Washington. You see some of that playing out in Buffalo. And again, there comes a point in that quarterback's life where the team says to the quarterback, dude, now we have to pay you all the money. So it's going to be harder for us too. But you hope at that point that quarterback has reached a level of play and confidence in the league to where he can carry the heavy burden. Is that some of the thought process? So I know there's a little gray area in what I'm saying here. But again, I don't think the Colts have failed Richardson, but I also don't think they've gone above and beyond to try and do something there. It sounds like they were close to it last year with the Giants, but they haven't done that. And there are a lot of teams that draft quarterbacks very high that disagree with that approach. So Richardson has done enough to be in the position that he's in, but also I think it's fair to say the Colts have also not swung for the fences with that sort of move.
Yeah.
I mean, even a Brian Thomas in round one last year, if you want to continue to play it out. Something along those lines to where, here is the significant resource there. Yeah.
Sam is the final Twitter question for today's podcast. If there is a true, quote, quarterback competition, end quote, between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, put your head coach headset on, KB. How would you divide the snap/play time between the two during the Colts' 3 preseason games?
Boy, it's a great question. I mean, don't you have to play him a ton? I mean, like, I know that goes against everything that, NFL football is about when it comes to the preseason.
Not to mention, that means you have to play some of your key starters, right?
I think that's a great point. I think that's a great point you bring up.
You got to play Pittman. You got to play Downs. You got to play Pierce. You got to play Mitchell. You got to play Taylor probably a little bit.
Yeah.
And your offensive line.
Right. I just, how they do this is going to be so interesting to me. I guess let me start here. And, it's a question I'll ask Shane again this offseason. The Colts did this last year. And, to be fair to the Colts, there are a lot of NFL teams that are doing this. Some are not. Some are still taking advantage of all 10 of their OTA sessions. The Colts are only doing 6 of them. And I'm just kind of like, boy, you've got the opportunity. For those unfamiliar, the all-season program, you have 10 voluntary OTAs. Voluntary pretty much means everybody's there anyways. So you have 10 days where you can do 11 on 11. Then you have 3 mandatory days. That's the mini camp. So you have 13 practices in the spring where you can go offense versus defense. The Colts, like they did last year, they're electing to pass up 4 of those days. That kind of confuses me, especially when you have a quarterback competition. I get you're not installing a new offense, but you are installing a new defense. So that's a little head-scratching to me. Now, Shane, I think, falls on the NFL coach barometer of rest. Player, I mean, how many times do we see the Wednesday walkthroughs, when the Colts get into the regular season? And I think largely...
Those start in week 2, right?
I mean, it's, I know you're tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but, I mean, it seems like it starts a little earlier with the Colts than it does other teams. If you look at last year in the preseason, Eddie, Richardson threw 4 passes in the opener, didn't play in week 2, and then played that half in Cincy where he threw 14 passes.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if I was mapping out the preseason right now, I would say whoever you feel is the leader would start preseason game number 1, and then you'd give the other guy preseason game number 2, and then you commit to one of them for preseason game 3. Do you kind of like that? And I would, frankly, play, let's just say Richardson's the leader. I'd play him for the full first quarter and then play Jones the whole second quarter, week 1. I'd flip them for week 2, and then I'd commit to one for a full half in week 3.
Here's the other added element, KB, is joint practices.
I know, and I just am not a believer in this. The joint days mean you don't need to play your guys in that preseason game. I mean, the red jersey, man, is on for those joint practices still.
Yes, sir.
And both these guys have a leg element. It'd be a disservice to act like Daniel Jones is Flacco. I mean, Daniel Jones can benefit from, having the red jersey off. So I am very wishful thinking in that approach, but that's kind of where I'm at. I guess let's start there, Eddie. What do you think about that general preseason approach? Are you good with that? Are you...
Yeah, I'm probably on board with that. That's probably something I would do. Is
it wishful thinking, though?
Quarter for the proverbial starter for the first preseason game.
At that point, you're about 10 practices in at training camp, assuming it's the same schedule that it usually is.
Or do you just play them both a quarter each preseason game? That way you're not tipping your hat or showing your cards.
Yeah,
to who's your week 1 starter.
Yeah,
we all know Shane Steichen's a big gamesmanship fella.
I just don't think you're in a position to do that. Gosh, it sounds like I'm waking up and falling out of bed again, man, with my reactions to some of these answers.
Kind of like me watching golf.
God, you hate golf. I get golf is boring as hell. I do. It's a great question Sam asks. Great question. So, yeah, we'll see how all of it plays out. Joint practices and all of it. The Colts have said what? Within some practices, they'll actually split the starting reps.
Yeah.
If it's a third down day, we'll give both of you each a series with that. So, Shane did say, it was kind of a throwaway line at the combine, but he did say something to the effect of, I'm looking at kind of, do I need to tweak training camp at all?
Yeah.
He's evaluating his process. Because this is a separate issue in the quarterback competition. Eddie, the last time the Colts won a season opener, you didn't have armpit hair.
How do you know?
I don't know. You strike me as a late pubertyer. I have no idea. Were you?
A late bloomer? Is that what you were going for there?
Yeah. Pubertyer, I think is a word that I used.
What year was that when the last one?
Terrell Pryor, right? Raiders, 2013.
I would have been...
How old?
I would have been 15. No, you said 2015?
2013.
13, yeah, I would have been 15.
No, yeah, so you got a little bit of armpit hair.
I may have had like a peach fuzz, some peach fuzz growing down there.
That vivid image will probably end it. You got anything else?
No, positional mock on Monday podcast. We'll go over that. That's available on 1075fan.com. Between now and then, KB, I think I'm going to try and rewatch what Chris Ballard said at the Combine, and then just kind of hear what some of his draft thoughts again before we do that positional mock draft on Monday, just to kind of put that back on the top of the mind as we approach, let's see, today's Wednesday, right? So tomorrow, Thursday, the April 10th, will be 2 weeks out from the first round of the NFL draft.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. He's the great Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen. Enjoy the Masters. Screw you, Eddie.